And I just walked out of the courtroom, and having followed this case really for the past 3 years, the reading of the verdicts just now was by far the most intense and most emotional moment of this entire ordeal. As soon as the first guilty verdict was read, Tom Teves, who lost his son in the shooting, made a fist, held up his hand almost as to say yes, and started nodding. You could tell there was some satisfaction in his face, in his being, after that first guilty verdict was read. Sitting behind him, Joshua Nolan. He was shot, he was wounded, he was severely injured in the shooting. He now walks with a cane. He put his hand to his leg, made a fist, looked down, and started crying. Across from him was Micayla Medek's grandmother. Soon as a guilty verdict was read in reference to her granddaughter, she put her hands down, looked almost as if she was praying, and just started crying, and then put her head up for a moment and started to smile. And then there was Sandy Phillips, whose daughter Jessica was killed in the shooting. She started to nod her head once the guilty verdict was read for her daughter's case. And then, in true form, her Twitter handle is Mama Redfield. She started handing out her hand to others, almost to comfort them. It was also impossible to ignore the jury. Many of them started crying as soon as they came into the courtroom. At one point, a box of Kleenex was being handed through all the different rows. It was clear this was a very difficult process for them, meeting behind closed doors for about a day and a half. Some, including the foreman, also looked directly at the gunman. Some also making a few glances to the family members, but primarily looking at the judge, sitting almost stone-faced, but clearly crying. This was a very agonizing decision for them. And I've not talked to any of the family members personally since this verdict was read, but as I was walking out, just looking at their faces, just looking at their body language, it is clear a big burden has been lifted off their shoulders, Anne.
And I have to ask, Mark, did you notice any visible change in the gunman?
When the verdict was read, and you perhaps even had a better vantage point than I did because of the fixed camera, I was behind him, but he at first was swiveling in his chairs, and then when the verdict was read, of course it's customary for the defendant to stand up. He kept his hands in his pocket the whole time. I could see his mom and dad, and mom, who've been there pretty much in the front row right behind him throughout this whole trial, were silent. His mom showing a little bit of emotion. There were some people around her giving support. Her parents, those just looking straight forward. But as far as the gunman, he looked almost nonchalant with his hands in his pocket, Anne.